Hey, I've just seen a disturbing video, which unfortunately is not unusual in this world, but it's something that really, 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 really makes me angry. And basically, it's a guy in a street in Istanbul, um, attacking. He's walking down an alley with a woman. It's daylight, and he's sort of dragging her. Then suddenly, he repeatedly stabs her. Um, I don't know how serious the stabbing is, but she's on the ground, and anyway, another guy comes and sort of the other guy obviously wants to intervene, but is wary because the guy has a knife, and he gets a bin after a while and sort of chucks it at the guy, and eventually the sort of maneuvers the second guy makes helps the woman to escape. Presumably the stabbing isn't too serious as she's on her feet and she can run, but nevertheless, it's disturbing. Um, and I've seen similar videos from China and from different parts of the world. The video, what I want to talk about here is men using violence against women. Um, Now, this is something that a lot of decent people have strong views on, and a lot of decent men have strong views on. And I want to address some of the issues that tend to come about. Firstly, people say, "Oh, what about violent women?" Well, um, I don't ignore that fact. There are violent women out there. Okay, you get some horrible women in the world as well. That's true. So I agree that we shouldn't see all women as vulnerable, delicate little girls. Um, but the fact is this, the fact is the average woman is not as physically strong as the average man, okay? That's an indisputable fact. And although there are violent women out there, the vast majority of women that I know are not, okay? Well, I mean, the vast majority of men I know are not as well, at least not openly. Most of the people I know are not violent people, but clearly violent people do exist out there. Now, the reason I'm focusing on male violence against women is because I am a man. So I believe I have a responsibility to say something. Quite obviously, the majority of men don't behave this way. Quite obviously, most men have values on this. I mean, the bottom line is you shouldn't behave like that to anybody. Um, Violence should be the last way to solve a problem. I don't have a problem with people having arguments. That's part of life. It happens, but violence should be a last resort. Now, as a guy, I find it very difficult to watch, for example, footage of a man using violence against a woman without really getting very angry and wanting to beat the crap out of the guy. That's my honest sentiment. I honestly feel like just beating the shit out of the guy, pulverizing him to a bloody pulp. That is my God honest sentiment. Um, some people would say that makes me a thug, but the thing is, men like this don't change with a single counseling session or, a single anger management class. From what I understand, it's, guys that behave like this. I mean, a man who behaves like that, especially in public, if that's what he's going to do in public, daylight, what do you think he's going to do in private? Um, and the fact is, there are too many men out there who do have a casual attitude that it isn't a big deal using violence against women. I mean, just for the record, I don't condone violence against anyone. I would be vocal if an innocent unarmed man was attacked, or if and actually a lot of victims of assault are males, so I'm not overlooking that fact, and they should be treated with the same compassion as any victim of crime. But I have to admit, when I see a woman being a victim, it does affect me in a particular way, um, especially if it's situations like this. I've seen videos from China as well, similar things. Um, there's certain types of cowardice that I despise. One is a man using physical force against a woman who's defenseless. And you know that I don't believe it's justified ever, unless it's an absolute case of self-defense. But I'm talking here about guys who just use women as throw them around like rag dolls, and it really makes my blood boil. Another type of cowardice is a group working on an individual. That could be a group of guys working on one guy, or a group of women attacking a single female. They are cowards, and they should be condemned as such. But I just can't comprehend the mindset of a man who would do that. I mean, I just can't begin to comprehend it. I believe it. I know it exists, but I can't understand the. I mean, when I look at a female face, I just cannot comprehend that some guys could punch a woman in the face, or I just it's alien to me. I mean, I believe it happens, obviously, but it really makes my blood boil. And the thing is, I don't think it's obviously, like I said, violence should be a last resort. But I'm thinking, what would I do in this situation? Well, obviously, you can't be reckless. You can't let your emotions dictate what you do in these situations. But I honestly believe that my anger would get the better of me if I saw this. And I'm not just being bravado. I'm genuinely not just being bravado with this, but I honestly believe my anger would get the better of me, and I would go in and attack the guy. And I might regret it. I might end up getting stabbed or something. But although I'm a rational person, but sometimes I do get very angry about these sort of things. And the thing is, I commend the second guy in the video for trying to do something. But he was obviously cautious because the other guy had a knife, and I don't blame him for that. It's understandable. But the guy was also on a phone, so I think you know it's easy to judge situations if you're not in them. But I have been on one or two situations, confronted by gangs. And an interesting thing is, I always felt more reactionary when there was people with me who were more vulnerable. I remember about 10 years ago, I was with some friends, and one of them was a girl. And I'm not saying this is a sexist thing, but she wasn't a shrinky violet, but she wasn't a sort of physically tough person, right? And the gang confronted us. Now I remember I didn't end up in a fight with them, but I got quite like I stood my ground, and I told them to go to hell when they asked her for money and so on. So in the end, there wasn't any major violence. But the point I'm making is, I know from my own previous experience that I haven't sort of stood by and let these things happen. So I would like to think I'm man enough to do something. Obviously, you have to be level-headed as well, because if you're in another country, for example, it's more difficult to do something like that. Now, say for example, I saw that in China, my heart would want to intervene, but my brain would probably think, be very careful with this. In a country like China, there is a lot of fraud, so there are situations where good Samaritans have ended up regretting their actions because the situation has been set up in order to extort money. Terrible as that sounds, it does happen. Um, Secondly, you wouldn't necessarily be fined for it. And that's another thing I should add. There are situations where women, in different parts, this isn't a sort of regional thing. I have heard of examples of women actually defending their abuser to the detriment of the man who is trying to do the right thing. So I don't actually blame some guys for not intervening. I don't think it's a case of cowardice. I think it's a case of trying to really judge the situation. But for myself, although I'm a rational person, and although generally I think with reason, there are times when I feel so angry with a given situation that maybe I don't necessarily think um, rationally. I mean, I have to admit, if I saw something like this, I do think my anger would get the better of me, and I think I would intervene. And that wouldn't be brave. It would just be my my values as a man overriding my thinking. And the thing is, I'm not sort of being making myself out to be something I'm not here. You know, I'm not a professional martial artist. I'm not. I rank myself average in terms of physical skill. I don't think I'm like really tough, but I think I can handle myself, and I think I'd be able to defend someone else if push came to shove. Um, sometimes you cannot underestimate the power of anger. So, a guy like me who's physically average, I think if I was angry enough, I could probably do something, and I would feel sort of a duty to do something. But anyway, I'm just sharing thoughts here because I want to know if anyone else feels the same way. I'm sure there's many guys out there who would. When I see a guy treating a woman like that, I just feel enraged. I feel absolutely, I find it hard to watch. And just to be clear, I am consistent with this. I mean, I condemn women who use violence as well. I condemn all mindless violence. But I think violence can be justified if it is to defend another person, or to defend yourself if it's absolutely necessary. Violence should be a last resort. But I think if you're a guy and you see another man beating up a woman, at the very, very least, you should contact the police. But I would not judge or blame any other guy for intervening. I really wouldn't, because a woman couldn't defend herself in that situation. Okay, some women can, but the fact of the matter is, not every woman can be Lara Croft. Um, and incidentally, I would probably defend another man as well if I saw him getting attacked by a gang. I mean, I think it was in the film Captain Corelli's Mandolin. He said, "If I see a man in that situation, I see that man as my brother." I like that line, and it's a sort of principle I have. I've got certain values as a man. I believe men shouldn't beat women. I believe fights should be one on one, not a gang on one. If a fight is necessary, that is. And most street fights are dumb. So yeah, that's just my thoughts. Let me know what you think of this. Um, watching that shit makes me so angry, and fortunately, is a big problem. I do believe there should be very harsh consequences for guys like this. And I'm not being inconsistent. If a woman is violently abusing her husband or boyfriend all the time, she should also be punished. Although I would urge guys in those situations, unless children are involved, leave the bitch. You don't need that in your life. Um, you know. And to women out there, girls, if you have an abusive husband or an abusive boyfriend, for goodness sake, don't blame yourself. If you have children, I appreciate it's difficult. I'm not a psychiatrist here, but I'm just saying this as a fellow human being. Do yourself a favor. Um, Report the guy to the police, because in the long run, the chances are you will hurt your children as well. But don't let them away with it, and for goodness sake, don't blame yourself. People have arguments, that's part of life, but no one has an excuse to use violence against someone they're supposed to care for. So if you are in that situation, I'm urging you, please, as a fellow human being, don't accept it. Don't blame yourself. It doesn't matter um, how you may have annoyed him or whatever. There's no excuse for his behavior, because people can have arguments. They can exchange their differences. That's fine. I think that's normal. But if he starts using violence on you, please, please consider going to the police, and don't blame yourself. And to guys, I would urge fellow men, you know, I'm not saying that we can all sort of rush in there and be a superhero, but I think we should do something if we see this situation in public. Um, I'm not sort of saying go in and KO the guy, but at the very least, I think as men, we do have a responsibility to do something. That's all I'm saying. And if you're in another country, I appreciate that's a lot harder. But what I would do in another country is probably try and get the police involved or something. But I know in my own heart, I cannot watch injustice and walk by. That's just the sort of person I am. Okay, thanks for watching.